Did you know one actor literally died laughing after filming a scene with Boris Karloff? Or that Universal forced the leading lady to stand beside live lions with no protection while the crew hid behind cages? Welcome back to Iconic TV Rewind. And today, we're unraveling the darkest, strangest, and most disturbing secrets buried beneath the sands of the 1932 horror classic, The Mummy.
What's the matter, man? For heaven's sakes, what is...
Fact number 1. Karloff sat in the makeup chair for 8 hours straight. Every morning, Boris Karloff arrived long before sunrise and submitted to an agonizing 8-hour transformation in Jack Pierce's makeup chair. Pierce layered cotton, collodion, gum, clay, and over 150 feet of linen around him until Karloff was practically mummified in real life. The materials tightened as they dried, pulling at his skin, limiting his movement, and leaving him with raw patches when the bandages were removed. Director James Whale took one look at the finished makeup and joked Karloff looked like someone had dumped garbage over him. But behind the joke was real physical suffering. What makes this ordeal even more shocking is how little of it appears on screen. The fully wrapped mummy appears for only a couple of minutes before the film shifts to Ardath Bay, meaning hours of Karloff's discomfort were reduced to seconds of footage. But those few scenes were unforgettable. The stiff posture, the ancient stillness, the eerie silence, all born from real physical strain. Karloff's sacrifice gave the mummy a presence that no modern prosthetics or CGI could ever match. Fact number 2. The makeup was so tight, Karloff couldn't speak. Jack Pierce's makeup didn't just restrict Karloff, it silenced him. The layers of cotton and collodion hardened around his cheeks and jaw like a mask, tightening as they dried and making it nearly impossible for him to speak or even shift his facial muscles. Karloff later recalled that the sensation was unlike anything he'd ever endured, even after the tortures of Frankenstein. He performed the entire mummy sequence trapped inside a shell that allowed almost no expression. What the audience sees as ancient stillness was actually the result of extreme physical restraint. By the time he transitioned into the Ardath Bay makeup, Karloff's skin was raw and irritated from repeatedly having the wrappings torn away. The rigid posture and slow movements he used for Bay weren't just acting choices. They were influenced by the lingering strain from those early scenes. His pain became part of the character, giving the mummy a haunting authenticity. Fact number 3, the film was born from King Tut fever. The discovery of King Tut's tomb in 1922 sparked a worldwide frenzy for Egyptian curses and ancient mysteries. Universal, eager to tap into the obsession, hired writer John L. Balderston specifically because he'd visited the tomb as a journalist. He'd walked through the corridors, seen the artifacts, and absorbed the atmosphere that captivated the public. His real-world experience shaped the film's tone, giving it a grounded sense of archaeological dread. This connection to real-life Egyptomania helped The Mummy stand apart from other monster movies of the era. Instead of relying on folklore or literature, the film drew directly from the public's obsession with curses and the unknown. Audiences believed ancient magic might genuinely come back to life, and Universal leaned into that belief. The film's rituals, scrolls, and warnings felt authentic because they grew from a real cultural phenomenon, not mere Hollywood invention. Fact number 4. The full mummy only appears for a few minutes. Despite being one of the most iconic movie monsters ever created, the fully wrapped mummy appears for only a brief moment in the film's opening sequence. After the creature awakens, the story quickly shifts to Ardath Bay, a disguise that allowed Universal to showcase Karloff's expressive face and haunting eyes. It also spared him from the excruciating 8-hour makeup process for every scene, something the production simply couldn't sustain. Yet, those few minutes were enough to make history. The stiff, ancient movements, the delicate twitch of his hand, the silent walk out of frame, they terrified audiences and defined the mummy archetype for generations. Posters and pop culture depictions drew from those fleeting images, proving that sometimes the most lasting impact comes from what the audience sees the least. Karloff's brief appearance became the blueprint for every mummy that followed. Fact number 5. One character died laughing. Literally. Bramwell Fletcher's scene as Ralph Norton remains one of early horror's most disturbing psychological breakdowns. After witnessing the mummy awaken, he slips into hysterical, uncontrollable laughter. Eyes wild, voice cracking, sanity collapsing in real time. The performance was so intense that it became one of the film's defining moments. Within the story, Norton later died laughing in a straitjacket, showing the mummy's power didn't always require violence. What makes the scene so effective is how real Fletcher's terror feels. His laughter isn't playful or exaggerated. It's desperate, frantic, and painful to hear. Early audiences were shaken because it suggested the horror extended far beyond physical threat. The mummy could destroy the mind, not just the body. That single scene cemented the mummy as more than a monster movie. It was an early exploration of psychological horror, long before the genre had a name. Fact number 6. Ardath Bey is an anagram for Death by Ra. Ardath Bey wasn't just a mysterious alias, it was a hidden puzzle planted by screenwriter John L. Balderston. The name is an anagram for Death by Ra, the Egyptian sun god. Balderston loved embedding symbolic references into his scripts, and this one hinted at a deeper cosmic defiance. Ardath Bey wasn't simply a resurrected priest, he was a figure operating outside the natural order, a man whose very name signaled doom connected to the ancient gods he once worshipped. This subtle detail was completely missed by 1930s audiences, but adds a layer of meaning for modern fans. It ties the character's vengeance directly to the mythology of Egypt itself, reinforcing the idea that his resurrection is an affront to divine power. Even if viewers never caught the anagram, its presence gives the character a subconscious sense of menace, a prophecy of death woven into the identity of a man pretending to be alive. Fact number 7. The director and leading lady hated each other. Behind the camera, tensions ran high between director Karl Freund and actress Zita Johann. Freund was a demanding, unforgiving perfectionist who already struggled with the transition from cinematography to directing. Johann, known for her intensity and discipline, felt singled out and mistreated throughout production. She later said Freund constantly used her as a scapegoat whenever scenes lagged or issues arose, creating a hostile atmosphere that made every day on set a battle of wills. Despite their conflict, Johann delivered one of the most emotionally grounded performances of the Universal horror era. Her scenes carried a realism that contrasted sharply with the movie's supernatural elements, giving the story a human core. Ironically, the tension between Johann and Freund may have contributed to the performance's intensity. While their feud made production miserable, it helped produce a film that still unsettles audiences nearly a century later. Fact number 8. Zita Johann was forced to film with live lions, unprotected. One of the most shocking production decisions came when Karl Freund forced Zita Johann to film a scene surrounded by live lions. Johann stood exposed in the animal enclosure, while Freund and the crew watched from behind protective cages. It was an unnecessary and dangerous stunt, especially considering the limitations of 1930s animal handling. Johann later recounted how terrified she was, knowing one wrong movement could lead to a real attack, and all for a scene that never even made it into the finished film. The moment became one of the biggest sources of resentment Johann held toward Freund. She felt the stunt was reckless, humiliating, and exploitative, serving no artistic purpose beyond shock value. The fact that the footage was later scrapped only intensified the frustration. It remains one of those behind-the-scenes stories that reveal just how little regard early Hollywood sometimes had for the safety of its performers. Fact number 9. The leading lady believed she could levitate. Zita Johann's fascination with mysticism wasn't an act. It was a genuine part of her life. She studied occult writings, participated in spiritualist circles, and believed strongly in reincarnation. Several colleagues even recalled her speaking seriously about moments where she felt she had levitated during meditative states. This wasn't just eccentricity, it was part of her personal identity, and it significantly influenced how she approached her performance in The Mummy. Karl Freund cast Johann partly because of these beliefs, thinking they would help her embody the film's themes of past lives and spiritual connection. And in many ways, he was right. She brought a commitment to the role that felt sincere rather than theatrical, grounding the supernatural elements in a sense of emotional truth. Whether or not her metaphysical experiences were real, they gave her scenes a haunting, lived-in authenticity that elevated the entire film. Fact number 10. The script was originally about an Italian sorcerer, not a mummy. Before the marketing department stepped in, The Mummy wasn't about ancient Egyptian curses at all. It was a script called Cagliostro, based on a legendary occultist who claimed to have lived for centuries. Universal wanted a story about immortality, deception, and forbidden magic. But as Egyptian fever swept the world after King Tut's discovery, executives realized a mummy movie would be far more marketable. Overnight, the script was reworked, locations changed, and the sorcerer became an ancient priest brought back from the dead. Despite the dramatic shift, traces of Cagliostro remained in the final film. The themes of eternal life, hypnotic influence, and reincarnation were carried over almost directly, giving The Mummy an unusually layered narrative for a horror film of the era. The movie we know today exists because Universal followed cultural momentum, transforming a European occult story into one of Hollywood's most iconic monster films. Fact number 11. The poster sold for nearly $500,000. In 1997, an original Mummy poster shattered records when it sold for an astonishing $453,500, making it the most expensive movie poster ever auctioned at the time. Only 3 authentic copies are known to exist, each printed in a striking mix of reds, yellows, and eerie greens that perfectly captured Universal's early horror aesthetic. Collectors consider it a holy grail. More than just advertising, it's a piece of cinematic archaeology. Its rarity, age, and artistic boldness have caused its value to grow every decade. What makes the poster so coveted is how boldly it presents Karloff's wrapped, decaying visage, an image that barely appears in the film itself. The art became the definitive representation of the mummy in popular culture, shaping how people imagined ancient Egyptian horror for generations. To own the original isn't just to have a poster, it's to hold the mythology of the mummy in physical form, a relic almost as legendary as the Scroll of Thoth. Fact number 12. It uses the same creepy music as Dracula. If the film's opening music sounds strangely familiar, that's because Universal recycled Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake from Dracula, 1931. The haunting classical theme created a sense of elegance mixed with dread, and the studio used it deliberately as a kind of unofficial sonic branding for their early monster films. It was cheaper than commissioning a new score, but it also gave audiences an immediate sense of gothic atmosphere the moment the music began. The reuse of Swan Lake helped establish a continuity between the films, even though their stories are unrelated. Audiences in the 1930s would instantly associate the music with fear, creating tension before a single frame of the movie appeared. In many ways, this classical cue became Universal's first horror theme, long before studios relied on original scores to set the tone. The music tied The Mummy to the rising monster universe that Universal Studios was quietly building. Fact number 13. A crucial reincarnation scene was banned and lost forever. One of the most ambitious sequences ever shot for the film was a sweeping montage depicting Helen's past lives across centuries, her rebirths, tragedies, and connections to Imhotep. But when Universal submitted the film to censors, the sequence was rejected for being too intense and too suggestive, with some claiming the violence and implied sensuality went beyond what audiences should see. The studio removed the entire sequence, even though it cost significant time and money to produce. Today, the footage is considered completely lost. Actor Henry Victor is still credited as a Saxon warrior, even though his entire performance vanished with the cutscene. Film historians believe the montage would have added depth to Helen's character and strengthened the reincarnation theme at the heart of the story. Instead, it became one of early Hollywood's great lost moments, another piece of cinema history buried like an artifact that will likely never be recovered. Fact number 14. This was Karloff's first speaking role as a star. Before The Mummy, Karloff was known almost exclusively for his silent, monstrous presence in Frankenstein. Fans had never heard him speak on screen in a major role. The Mummy changed everything. As Ardath Bey, Karloff delivered lines in a slow, hypnotic, almost ritualistic cadence that captivated audiences. His voice, deep, controlled, and otherworldly, helped redefine him as more than a monster performer. He became a true leading man in horror. Critics at the time praised the eerie quality of his speech, noting how he used pacing and tone to enhance the supernatural aura around the character. His voice suggested centuries of grief and longing, adding emotional weight that would have been impossible with bandages and silence alone. The Mummy proved Karloff wasn't just a figure of fear, he was an actor capable of haunting audiences with nothing more than the way he delivered a line. Fact number 15. The director only directed 2 films in his entire career. Karl Freund was already a legend in cinematography when he stepped into the director's chair for The Mummy. Despite his talent, this film was only one of 2 major directing credits he would ever have, the other being the cult classic Mad Love in 1935. Freund found directing stressful and demanding, and he preferred being behind the camera rather than leading a production. Even so, his command of shadows, framing, and atmosphere gave The Mummy its hypnotic visual identity. After leaving directing behind, Freund went on to make history in a completely different space, television. He helped invent the 3-camera shooting technique used on I Love Lucy, a system still used in sitcoms today. It's ironic that the man who created one of horror's most iconic films also shaped the visual language of modern comedy. His brief directing career left a legacy that extended far beyond classic monster movies. Fact number 16. Karloff could only be billed by one name. By the early 1930s, Boris Karloff had achieved something incredibly rare for a horror actor: single-name billing. Universal promoted him simply as Karloff the Uncanny, putting him in the same league as stars like Garbo and Valentino. That level of recognition was almost unheard of for someone who'd risen to fame playing monsters. But after Frankenstein, Karloff became a phenomenon, and Universal wanted audiences to know exactly who was behind the supernatural figure on screen. This bold marketing move helped solidify his legendary status. Seeing the name Karloff alone on posters made him feel mythical, larger than life, yet intimately tied to the world of cinematic horror. It also signaled to audiences that The Mummy wasn't just another monster flick. It was a Boris Karloff event. His presence guaranteed a certain level of quality, atmosphere, and terror, making him the first true superstar of the horror genre. Fact number 17. The film was shot in just 3 weeks. Universal scheduled The Mummy as a fast, efficient production, giving director Karl Freund only 3 weeks to shoot the entire film. And even with that tight schedule, Freund pushed his cast and crew relentlessly. He often kept them on set past midnight, determined to get the lighting and camera movements exactly right. For Karloff, this meant brutal days that ended late at night, followed by early mornings where he endured the punishing makeup process. Despite the rushed timeline, The Mummy ended up looking polished, atmospheric, and visually stunning. Freund's experience as a cinematographer allowed him to work quickly without sacrificing artistry. The expressive shadows, sweeping movements, and eerie lighting were all created under intense time pressure. It's a testament to the crew's skill that a film made in less than a month still stands as one of Universal's most haunting and elegant horror classics. Fact number 18. Karloff's famous ring was owned by a legendary collector for decades. The ornate ring worn by Karloff in The Mummy became an iconic piece of horror memorabilia. After production ended, the ring didn't disappear into storage. It eventually ended up in the hands of Forrest J. Ackerman, the legendary writer, editor, and collector who practically built modern sci-fi and horror fandom. Ackerman treasured the ring so much that he actually wore it for years, treating it not just as a collectible, but as a personal symbol of his love for classic monsters. Owning the ring connected Ackerman directly to Karloff and the legacy of The Mummy. It wasn't just a prop, it was a relic of early Hollywood horror, touched by the man who helped define the genre. Ackerman was known for giving fans tours of his vast collection, and the Karloff ring was always one of the most prized pieces. To horror enthusiasts, it was like seeing a sacred artifact from a long-forgotten tomb. Fact number 19. Jack Pierce won a special award presented by Karloff himself. Jack Pierce's groundbreaking makeup work on the mummy earned him a special award from the Hollywood Filmograph Journal, an honor rarely given to makeup artists at the time. And in a poetic twist, the person chosen to present the award was Boris Karloff, the very actor Pierce had put through countless hours of discomfort. Despite the pain the makeup caused, Karloff deeply respected Pierce's craftsmanship and was proud to honor him publicly. After Pierce's death in 1968, the award mysteriously disappeared. No one knows whether it was lost, stolen, or tucked away in a private collection. Its absence has only added to the mystique surrounding Pierce's legacy. The man who created some of the most iconic monster makeups in history now has a missing trophy that feels like a relic waiting to be rediscovered. Yet another artifact tied to the strange legacy of the mummy. Fact number 20. It's the only universal monster without a literary source. Unlike Dracula, Frankenstein, or the Invisible Man, the Mummy wasn't based on a novel or short story. It was the first and only universal monster crafted entirely from Hollywood imagination. Rather than adapting literature, the studio drew inspiration from contemporary events, specifically the public obsession with King Tut's discovery and the widespread belief in ancient Egyptian curses. The result was a monster that felt modern yet ancient, supernatural yet rooted in real archaeological history. This originality is part of what makes the Mummy so unique within Universal's Golden Age lineup. It wasn't burdened by expectations from book readers or bound to a pre-existing narrative. Instead, it allowed screenwriters and designers to build a mythos from the ground up, blending mysticism, romance, archaeology, and horror in a way no previous monster film had attempted. The Mummy became a creature shaped entirely by the fears and fascinations of its era, a true Hollywood creation born from the imaginations of the early 20th century. So there you have it, 20 bizarre and disturbing facts that prove The Mummy wasn't just a movie. It was an ordeal. If you enjoyed uncovering these secrets from Hollywood's darkest tombs, smash that like button. Subscribe for more classic horror deep dives, and tell me in the comments which fact shocked you the most. Was it the lions, the lost reincarnation scene, or Karloff's legendary ring? Until next time, stay curious, and whatever you do, don't read any ancient scrolls.